This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reif Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
It shows you the quality of teams in the division. And again, you look at Detroit, who we played last night, and they're not playing in the playoffs, and you can make a strong argument they could easily be playing in the playoffs.
They would have made the playoffs last year.
Yeah, so it's. I mean, does it battle test you? Yes, but also there's no easy road. I mean, it's going to be a grind, and that's a tough part about these, especially the first round. Some of these matchups. You look in Dallas and Minnesota, top two teams that have to play each other, and so there's no easy road if you're going through our division.
No easy road, John Cooper. That's what we were talking about yesterday. Regardless of the seeding, It's going to be a tough game, a tough series.
Tough series.
And, I mean, we had some action yesterday, partner, and I think we have a good feel for what's going to happen here, right?
So this is a mean-nothing game for the Lightning, thanks to the Philadelphia Flyers.
Boo!
Flyers beat the Canadiens in regulation. Yeah, I was reading some of the Montreal clips. Essentially, they called the Flyers lineup an AHL lineup. Now, I think the Canadiens didn't dress all of their microphone is drooping here.
It's okay.
All of their top guys, but many of their top guys did play. I mean, Suzuki played, Caulfield played, Lane Hudson played, and Philadelphia won the game. So, I mean, look, these late season games, they are a little bit of a wild card. I mean, the Flyers put in a bunch of guys who were probably really excited to be in a game. They didn't care that there was nothing at stake for the Flyers. The Flyers are locked in as the third seed, and maybe that had an impact. For a lot of the Lightning fans who've been wringing their hands about, oh my gosh, not every game looks great, and there have been a couple of games that especially haven't looked great. I mean, I've been seeing the Canadiens. They were like 2 of the last 3. The Canadiens haven't looked good. They apparently didn't look very good last night. I don't think that matters a whit. When we start the series this weekend, we do know now the Lightning do have home ice. We are awaiting the announcement of the schedule for this series and all the series, and not all the series are set. The West is still up in the air, but the East is now set. Boston had a pretty commanding win over New Jersey yesterday to lock up Wild Card 1. So it'll be Buffalo, Boston, Tampa Bay, Montreal, Carolina, Ottawa, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. That's what you got in the East, and we know the Lightning will be starting this weekend at home. We have heard there's an event in the building on Saturday. I mean, that would probably indicate Sunday is the starting day for the series, but you never know. I mean, we've seen concerts move before depending on the concert, so we'll just have to wait for the announcement. The league is probably going to say these are the sorts of games, these are the series that we really want to profile, and we would really like this game to happen on this date at this time. And the teams will probably do what they can to accommodate the teams.
Tampa Bay, Montreal may fit that. Because of the pop that Montreal brings, obviously, and Tampa Bay where they are right now.
Well, Montreal would like to be Saturday night, hockey night. Now, they're not the only Canadian team in the playoffs. Edmonton's going to be in the playoffs, although later start time, and Ottawa is going to be in the playoffs. But if the Lightning do start Sunday with the Canadiens and we're looking at every other day, Game 4 would be Saturday. So, I mean, that would be a hockey night game as well, and that would be a home game for the Canadiens. So we'll see. As it relates to tonight's game, it does sound like Max Crozier is going to be in, which is great news. He has not played since the Stadium Series game. And yes, I'm still here, even though I'm going black with my camera.
What happened?
As long as the microphone works, Steve is efforting to try and he's like under the hood here.
That's all right.
And even my microphone is falling. We better get the studio set.
What's happening? The regular season coming to an end. That's all right.
I was trying to get into a relaxed body position, and clearly the microphone's like, no, sit straight. Sit straight. Yeah, Steve is like, what is going on here? Hopefully the Lightning's performance in Game 1 does not have these sorts of hijinks. So just keep me off and let me just talk because it's distracting for me.
That's all right.
I don't even know what I was saying, Greg.
Well, we were talking about players
the lineup
in.
tonight. Yes. So Crozier got hurt or at least has not played since the Stadium Series game. He had surgery soon after during the Olympic break. 26 games he's missed. If they're going to need him in the playoffs, I don't know if they're going to need him in the playoffs, but it's nice to know that you have him available in the playoffs. If he's not slotting in immediately to the top 6, I think it's good that he's getting a game in before the playoffs begin. The same would not be true of James, who has been skating regularly, but is not expected to be in tonight. And, we were wondering about Brandon Hagel. Coop said on Monday, I think, not tonight, but maybe Wednesday for Hagel. Hagel is going to be in. So we're going to have a little bit of a makeshift lineup. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, with Crozier coming in, it would seem logical that Radish is not skating. Let me just back up. The Lightning did not have a full skate. In fact, they had the optional to the rink, so some players just stayed home. Okay? So we can't read into the lineup based on who's on the ice today, except that Crozier was on the ice and told the media in the locker room, I'm in tonight. And Hagel said the same. With Crozier coming in and Radish having been given a couple of games off here, I mean, it would seem logical to assume that Radish is not in tonight and they're going to let him rest these last 3 games of the regular season. We'll see. We do know Vasilevsky's starting, though. He was on the ice in the starter's net, and he came off first. So Vasi, a fan was asking about Vasi getting to 40 wins. It would be the second time in his career he would need to win tonight. He's sitting at 39. So we'll check on the other potential lineup changes. They have Steven Santini if they want to rest another defenseman. He's healthy and an extra at this point. So with Hagel coming in, somebody is coming out. And if you're going to say, well, it's going to be a bottom 6 guy, maybe not. Maybe they're going to rest, one of their top guys. And Hagel's replacing that guy. We'll see tonight. Rangers are basically using the lineup they've been using for quite some time here. I mean, they traded away some of their main dudes and have been they kind of raised the white flag and have been playing out the string here. They called up some guys from the minors who presumably are paving a way for a path to the NHL lineup next year. And they've had some impressive wins, actually, down the stretch. I think Shesterkin's going to start. He wants to get the last game of the regular season. So, I mean, we can talk a little bit about the Rangers. I was actually surprised because they're last in the East, right? So if you're last in the East, they're not last in the NHL, but they're last in the East. You're like, their metrics are just going to be ugly. Not really the case, Greg. It's been a weird year for the Rangers. I mean, their metrics aren't outstanding, but they're basically a middle-of-the-pack team in all those main metrics, offense, defense. Even their 5-on-5 ratio is not, particularly bad. They have a good power play. It's 6th in the NHL. Now, again, this is for the season, so some of that was with Panarin in the lineup. The thing that really jumped out at me was the difference between their home record and their road record. Remember, we were talking about how good the Bruins have been at home, and they've been on the road. The Rangers and Bruins are going to finish with the exact. Actually, I shouldn't say that. The Rangers have 1 road game left. At this point, the Rangers and Bruins have identical, in terms of points percentage, identical road records. The Bruins have as many road wins as road regulation losses. Same with the Rangers. Yeah. The Rangers on the road this year are 19-19-2. Mm-hmm. I mean, to make the playoffs, usually the Bruins are the exception. Usually you need to be above Hockey 500. But remember, the Rangers came into Tampa and had a decisive win earlier this year. They have been an adequate road team. At home, though, 14-20-7 at MSG. And remember, early in the year, they were getting shut out a lot. They've been shut out 10 times this year. So for them to be okay offensively in a season in which you've been shut out 10 times tells you they've scored enough in other games to pull that average up. But there's no sugarcoating this. Like, this has been a bad year for the Rangers. It's just statistically, it's not as bad as you might expect. And I don't really know what that means for next year. I don't know if they've had they beat the Lightning 7-3, right? So maybe they had some games where they just exploded offensively, which helped offset some of these other games where they didn't play very well. But if you're 6 games under Hockey 500 at home, you're not making the playoffs. And that probably was the telling stat, the most telling stat the Rangers have had this year.
it had to have been one of the bigger disappointments this year in the hockey season.
Yeah.
The Rangers. I mean, new head coach, a lot of expectations. They end up making some trades, and it just really hasn't worked at all. And
Shesterkin's had an okay year.
Yeah.
I mean, his numbers, he's had better numbers, but don't have my reading glasses on here. His goals against is 2.5, save percentage .912.
Right.
That's right where Vasi's is. Vasi's a little higher. No, Vasi's at 912 as well. So Shesterkin and Vasi have the same save percentage. Vasi has way more wins.
Yeah.
But Shesterkin's goals against is 2.5.
Where are they in goals
that's
allowed?
pretty good.
Where are they?
They're
in
middle
goals
of the
allowed?
pack. Yeah, they're middle of the pack.
Okay. Well, that's
So, you look at
it's interesting.
Vancouver, for example. Vancouver is basically last or close to last in every main category, and they're going to finish last in the NHL. The Rangers are not finishing last in the NHL, but they're finishing last in the Eastern Conference. And I don't know. If you look under the hood, it's not as broken as it seems based on their stats. But I'm not following this team game in, game out. And, I keep coming back to this. 14, 20, and 7 at home, suffering 10 shutout defeats this year. And the majority of those were at MSG. I think the breakdown was 7 at home, 3 on the road or something like that. So, they're going to have to figure out how to move forward here. They have some veteran guys that even though they're under contract, do they want to be part of a rebuild, if they're going to call it that? Fox, Trocheck, whose name surfaced at the deadline, are certainly two of those guys. We'll see. We don't have to spend the whole show on the Rangers. They're playing out the string here, but
And I think in today's NHL,
they're not as bad. I think they are not as bad as their standings position is what I'm seeing.
And I think today's rebuild or retool doesn't have to last 5 years. You can have a disappointing season the previous year, and cap's going up at some point. I don't know where they are regarding the cap. They may make some trades. Maybe they're able to just turn it around. To your point, maybe the law of averages start to play in, and you're more in line with the numbers, and you're a better team. I would anticipate.
It's hard to believe
too.
they're going to be 6 games under 500, hockey 500 at home next year, but who knows?
Fair
It's
point.
usually a very, very tough building to go into and play well and win. The opposite was true this year. In fact, the Lightning's one of their best games of the year came at MSG right around Thanksgiving, right after Thanksgiving. They absolutely dominated the Rangers.
Yeah.
In that game.
We're getting a lot of people chiming in on this narrative, partner, and I'll bring a couple to this to start some conversations. Vlad says, after the Montreal loss, Tampa Bay may give rest to Cooch, Point, Gensel, Cirelli, Moser, Gord to avoid some injuries. That is not the route it looks like they are going.
Well, first
tonight,
of all,
right?
we can see they only called up one player, and that's Brandon Halverson with Johansson day-to-day. Vasi looks like it's going to start, so Halverson will back up. For that to happen, what the fans suggested, we would have seen, just to use an example of who was called up when the Lightning were in Ottawa, we would have seen Peltier called up. We would have seen Duke called up. We might have seen, another player or two called up. They don't have that many extras in terms of available bodies.
Yeah.
They've got Sabourin.
Right.
And now with Hagel coming back and Crozier coming back, that's going to, from the last game, Hagel was hurt, Crozier was hurt, Santini was scratched. So you got 2 of those players coming in, maybe Santini as well. That would remove 3 players, potentially. And Radish. I didn't mention Radish. But as many players as the fan suggested, I don't foresee that happening. And look, individual milestones, what happens in the playoffs is much more important. But Kucherov still has a chance to catch Connor McDavid. I know it's, for most players to say you're 4 points back with a game to play, this isn't happening. Kucherov is not most players.
It's true.
Kucherov has had 5-point games this year, right? Now McDavid has 1 game left. It's tomorrow. Edmonton's at home against Vancouver, the worst team in the league. We'll see how close Kuch can get if he's in the lineup tonight. Braydon Point comes in with 18 goals. The last time Braydon Point did not reach 20 goals in a season, his rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it matters to Braydon Point? he would have to score 2 goals tonight. Maybe he wants to say, look, I want to try and get to 20.
You know who'd be a good person to ask? Braydon Coburn.
Yeah.
As he's with us.
What timing?
Kobe's sitting there waiting to talk a little hockey with us. And Kobe, it's great to be with you. And, we get into this debate this time of year about players sitting, players playing, knowing that the postseason is upon us. Mish just gave some good examples about some personal statistics players can achieve. How much does that play in, do you think, playing tonight for some of these players? And as a guy who played, does that go through your mind if you're close to some milestones, knowing that if I could use a couple of days off to rest to get ready for the playoffs, that's not a bad thing too?
Well, I think personally, you always want to reach those milestones. It just kind of, it's a point of pride for a lot of guys, and some guys do, and some guys don't set personal goals at the beginning of the year. And, those goals are important, even if they're personal related, whether it's points or whatever it is, or sometimes those goals are reevaluated during the season. But, the one thing I do know is that all these guys, they've gotten to this position because they're competitive as hell, and they hate to lose. They never want to be in a spot where they're just sticking their toe in, hoping the game just gets over and finished with. Once you lace them up and you're going against somebody, it could be your brother, it could be whoever, your best friends over there. You just want to win, and regardless of it's game 82 and you're in the playoffs, it just takes over. And saying like, oh well, we want to make sure this guy's rested, and an injury could happen. Well, listen, we've seen it this year. You can get injured at any time. All you got to do is you got to ask a Lilleberg. A puck can go off the crossbar or hit something and hit you in the face, and all of a sudden you're wearing a bubble for the next 6 weeks. But I believe that the reason these guys are the best in the world is because of what they bring to the table every game, and the professionalism they have, and the fact that they love winning.
So, Kobe, we've had a lot of commentary from fans reaching out to us on the show over the last few weeks, I would say. And if we just look at the Lightning's trajectory after the Olympics, they had a rough patch. There's no doubt about it. They kind of corrected things when they went out west. They had an 11-game stretch. They got points in 10 of them, winning 8. Then they clinched the playoff spot. And since they clinched the playoff spot, it's been a little more wobbly. Like, their game hasn't really been dialed in and buttoned up, maybe certainly as much as it's going to need to be buttoned up when the playoffs begin. How big of a deal is that? Understanding that your emotional investment is going to be affected by clinching, and then naturally it is going to go up when the playoffs begin. Or are you seeing some warning signs here that they're not playing the way they're going to need to play come this weekend in these last couple of games?
Well, I think one of the things that jumps out at me is the first period differential. This is a team that before the Olympic break was, they were feeling it. They started games the right way. They scored first, and right now that's just not happening. Whatever factors play into that, it's tough to tell. But I've been on teams where this becomes an issue. Where you're always playing from behind. You're chasing the game a little bit. And against a team like Montreal that they're going to face, it's a high offensive team that wants to get at it early, and a bunch of young, eager guys. Tempering that and make sure you fix that first period is going to put them in a better spot just through the rest of this game. Because I feel like as these games move along, as the game moves along for the Tampa Bay Lightning, they build and get better. But starting out of the gate slow is really something Coop's going to look at and just going to say, this is unacceptable, boys. Like, we got to make sure we start on the right foot here. And once we do that, I really believe their team game will take care of itself.
Braydon Coburn with us here on Power Lunch on Lightning Radio. Kobe, when you look at this series, do you feel like starting at home, a little extra pressure, and that could be tough for Tampa Bay? Do you like starting on the road? Does that have any bearing at all in this series?
Well, I think one of the factors is that, the regular season is going to end, or ended last night for the Montreal Canadiens. So they do have an extra day in there. Ours is going to finish tonight. And I think, the fact that you can get a couple full practices in, you don't have to factor in that travel. Little things like that make a difference, especially when, the turnaround from the regular season to the playoffs isn't that significant. It's not like they're waiting all weekend, until next week to play this game. We're going to get going right away here, which I think is a nice thing when you start at home. And I think this is a veteran group that's comfortable playing at home or on the road. It doesn't really matter to them. But I think, you come into the benchmark and you get the series going the right way, and you flip it and you put some pressure on the Canadiens. And we all know that type of playoff atmosphere that happens when they get into Montreal. I've played so many series there and so many games. It's a special place to play in the playoffs. But it'll be good to really kind of assert exactly our game, I think, early on, especially at home.
So the last meeting between the teams in the regular season had a lot of extracurricular activity, a lot of post-whistle scrums, fights. Kucherov was being bothered, I'll say, by Anderson. Corey Perry was bothering Lane Hutson. How much of an impact do you think that is going to have when they actually get into the playoff series? Why was that sort of a game important, maybe for both teams going into the series?
Oh, I remember watching this game and thinking I could put myself sitting on the bench during Marty St. Louis' pregame speech, and I'm pretty sure I could figure out exactly what the message he was communicating to the Canadiens that night. They didn't want to get pushed around. They know that this Lightning team is, frankly, they're. I would say, of any team, if you talked right now, and this is a credit to John Cooper and what he's done, is that when one of these guys in the Tampa Bay Lightning get drawn into a fight or have some sort of indiscretion or dirty hit against them, this is a team that they stick together. And Tampa Bay Lightning around the league are now known for that. And other teams point towards Tampa and say, that's the way we're supposed to do it. Montreal knows that. They know that there's some extremely talented players. They don't want to get pushed around by the Lightning. And I think that's a point of emphasis for them, that they're gonna push back. And this series is going to be physical. That night there was, it was a parade to the penalty box. When the playoffs, is that going to happen the same way? I don't think so, but I really feel kind of from that last game, there's going to be a little bit of that Florida, Tampa type of feel to it, where there's going to be a lot of post whistle scrums. There's going to be some tough guys that want to make sure that they get in people's faces and see how badly you want it. But as far as like the physicality and the nastiness of the series, I think it's going to be every part of what we think it might be. It's not going to be one of these touch and go series for sure.
Kobe, where do the Lightning give the Canadiens the most problems, and where do the Canadiens give the Lightning the most problems when you look at this series?
Yeah, great question. That one's easy for me. The Canadiens are elite in offensive zone movement. They really are. The way they are able to kind of almost be a positionless team where they're all over the place. There's constant movement. It's extremely hard to do that when you are undisciplined in your defensive zone coverage. Being able to move around, and as a defenseman, we get a little bit nervous when we're getting drawn away from the net, further and further away from the net. When we know our guy, we want to make sure we stay tight to them. But when there's all that kind of movement, and all of a sudden you look around, kind of like the other night when there was McDonough and Chernak in front of the net for when they scored their goal the other night, Chernak scored his goal. This is hard to defend. And Montreal, they're known for that. Guys like Lane Hutson, he's not the normal defenseman. He's going to be all over the place, whether it's in the corner, behind the net. It's kind of surfing through the slot. This is a tough task, and I'm sure that they're going to be looking at this and figuring out ways to close quickly and shut that offensive zone cycle game down for the Montreal Canadiens, because that's a huge thing that they do. And honestly, on the flip side for the Lightning, I know it's been down lately, but I really believe that it'll be rebounding and coming back in a big way. But the power play, I think this Tampa Bay power play, in years that they've gone out it's sputtered, and I think that they're going to spend a lot of time getting it back on track. Obviously, with Ratty's going to be back there. He's going to be kind of set up in that more traditional spot, which makes Kuch gives him a little bit more options. But on the PK side, the Montreal Canadiens aren't the best. They don't. I don't think they kill penalties with the big dogs, and I think this will be a way that the Lightning can really take advantage, especially when you go in the power play and the playoffs. If you have that advantage and that mental kind of being able to mentally impose on the other team that every time you put us in the power play, we're going to make you pay. It changes the way the Montreal Canadiens are going to be able to play this series.
Kobe, in the last game, we saw Nick Paul join Gordon Girgensons on that line that's been so important for the Lightning this year that John Cooper has used as a matching shutdown line. They did a nice job against Larkin's line the other night. How do you think that line, assuming Coop keeps that line together and wants to use it against the Suzuki line, how do you think that line might fare against a line like Suzuki's line that uses that constant movement that you were talking about in the offensive zone?
Absolutely love it. When I was watching the other night, I was thinking about, the fact that what did Holmberg bring to the table? So many great things. He's had a really great year. And one of the things Holmberg is really good at is puck protection, which is another thing that Paulie is a lead at, using that big body of his, being able to control the puck. I think they called him the backpack during the season, the ability to put people on his back and protect the puck. Paulie's got that in his bag. And I think this is just kind of I think this is exactly what Nick Paul needs. He's, I would say, even if you talk to him, he's trying to course correct. I don't think this year's gone exactly the way he would have hoped. But giving him this assignment, giving him this role, and making it very clear what they expect of him, I think this is a huge opportunity, one that Nick Paul and everything that I've seen him talk about and kind of insinuate is he's up for it. And this is the kind of thing where I can see him having a monster playoff. And we know exactly what we're going to get from Girgensons and Gord. We talked a lot about, that line works because they're all on the same page. And I think Paulie can get on the same page with those guys very quickly, especially when they're in that matchup shutdown role.
You mentioned Paul, and we've talked about this on the show quite a bit, Kobe, about players who maybe have had not the season they would like, that can you use the playoffs to reset and say, okay, now the season begins and I can really make an impact. Is that a thing you've seen over the years where guys can have that reset? And outside of Paul, is there maybe another player or two on the Lightning you think that can apply to as well?
Well, Greg, I haven't just seen it. I've lived it.
Yeah.
I've had years where I was like, you know what, that was for whatever reason, whether it was injuries or just, trying to work through something or inconsistency with my partner, that, I was just like, yeah, not my best year. And guys know that they're their best. They're the harshest critic. I will tell you that as much as you think that, fans will get on guys, there's no way that fans are even as hard as they are on themselves. The players are on themselves as far as being critical of how they're playing and wanting to self-correct and get back on track. And that's the beautiful thing about the playoffs is it's a brand new season. When you open that stat book in the locker room, everyone's got 0 games, 0 goals, 0 assists,
right.
0 plus minus, because listen, when you get to game 70 and you're looking at your plus minus and you're like, I'm minus 15 on the year, it can wear on you a little bit. Guys will tell you that it doesn't matter, but deep down, all of a sudden you pick up another minus in your back of your head. You're like, oh my gosh, like what's going on here? I'm going to get the green jacket this year or something, So it's a great opportunity, and in one where guys are like, they're trying to shed whatever happened in the regular season and go into the playoffs with a fresh perspective and making sure that they don't remember that regular season. All they remember is the success they had in the playoffs.
Last one for me, Kobe. I know you follow not just the Lightning, but the NHL very closely. So you are aware of the value of Noah Dobson to the Montreal Canadiens. He's the number 1 shot blocker in the NHL and the number 1 shot blocking team in the NHL. He typically, with Matheson, draws that shutdown assignment on defense. How big of a loss is this to Montreal in this series?
Well, I played with Noah Dobson for my short time when I was on the island. He's a very, very talented young kid, or he's a young kid. I guess he's now probably in the middle of what we say. It's funny how that happens, but he's extremely talented. His puck movement, this defensive side of him, I did not see in New York. But as his games matured, and I think that being in Montreal with their coaching staff has really helped him hone in on that defensive side of his game. But he could do it both now. He can do it on the offensive side, the defensive side. He's been an extremely important player for them this year, just in terms of consistency, as far as what he can do. As far as just being able to move the puck to some of their forwards. They want to get it. They have an uber talented group of forwards that want the puck, and having defensemen that can transport that puck, get it to him, and make plays. He's a guy that they're going to be tough to replace. They have some nice young players over there, but Noah Dobson's definitely in the category that is tough to replace for the Montreal Canadiens.
Kobe, last question for you. You played in a lot of these playoff games. There's no better time of the year, I'm sure, as you can attest. As somebody getting ready for those games, what is that like from a routine perspective? Are you just completely locked in? Everything else is kind of to the side, no distractions. I've heard some players say, it was so intense, that 2-month run. I had bills on my desk that I didn't even address and look at because I didn't want to be distracted with anything. Can you take us through kind of that mindset you have going into the playoffs?
Well, everybody's different, but I would have put myself in that category of just getting locked in. It was My wife knew, my family knew. If you really needed something, maybe I'll get to it, but there's a good chance that everything else will be falling by the wayside because it requires that amount of attention. And every night it takes a lot out of you physically, a lot out of you mentally, and your focus has got to be in one spot. So, and that was something that I loved. And it was, all of a sudden you have this kind of routine you do in the regular season, but then all of a sudden, and for me, I can admit it now, but I was pretty superstitious. So come playoff time, those superstitions went to 1,000. It was like, oh my god.
What was your biggest superstition? Did you have a?
Well, I remember being like, it was we were in Philadelphia, and it was me and Danny Sabrett. He lived in the same building as me, and we would go and eat at the same restaurant every single night. And there was a night that they were closed, and we had a game the next day, and we were freaking out. We called the owner, and we were like, "We're coming! Like we have to eat here." Like they're like, "Well, what about if we just make your food beforehand, and then have it ready for you to heat up the next day?" We thought about it, and we're like, "Oh, that might work. That might be something we're gonna do. Should we eat it like on the steps of the restaurant or something like that?" It just goes to another level.
Sure,
we were young and stupid, but we just definitely had those things. And when you're winning, you don't want to change anything.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, the thing I absolutely, and I'll kind of finish with this. The thing I loved about playoffs was that you got the same team for 7 days or for 7 games. Roughly like a week and a half. 2 weeks. Let's say 2 weeks, and as much as it was like, I want to like really like look the other guy in the eyes and tell you like, I'm going to outlast you. I'm going to wear you down. And what my identity was a player and the kind of game that I played that was important. I really felt like I could start to get the guys by game 4, 5, 6, 7. They're going to be really tired of seeing me. I was going to get in the way a lot. I was going to be as mean as I could. And I wasn't going to give an inch to those guys. And I really looked forward to that playoff thing, and where I could study somebody and I could figure out exactly what was going on with them, and try to figure out where their points of weakness was, and get to it as much as I could. But just being able to be in that circumstance, and I'll tell you, I think I'm 5 years out now. There's two times of the season that I really miss. Training camp, because I love it. I love the energy of training camp, and then the other one is playoffs. It's still to this day, it gets my heart going a little bit. You want to be there. You want to tell someone that, to F off, and like you're gonna get your glove in their face, and unfortunately being retired, those chances aren't around as much. I'm not a road rager, but I'm definitely I'll be watching with attentiveness and really kind of a lot of envy of what these guys get to go through in the next little bit here.
That's pretty cool. Well, if secondary, but you'll be involved doing broadcasts, but we'd love to have you come on throughout the playoffs.
They won't let me say F off to anyone on the broadcast either. So.
That's okay, Kobe. We'll still
mash the panels, mash the panels. Have the Montreal guys and us on one, and we'll be able to hash it out somehow.
Love it. Well, we appreciate your expertise on this, and I know it's the best time of the year for players and fans for sure, and we look forward to having you on later in the week.
Awesome, guys.
Thanks, Kobe.
Thank you, Kobe.
You got it. All right. Braydon Coburn joining us right there. And you can tell players, this is the best time of the year. I mean, for everybody, announcers, fans, but for the players, I do find it interesting. They get that locked in.
Well, his point about they're competitors at heart, and he was talking about game 82, but if you're a competitor, you want to compete when the stakes are at their highest.
Heck yeah.
And that's playoff hockey.
And that's playoff hockey.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to react to anything that Kobe had to say, you certainly can.
Mentioned Paul. He actually equated Paul with Holmberg. I was talking about this on yesterday's show. I think Holmberg is the best player on the team at holding onto the puck.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to get the puck off Ponce Holmberg when he has it. And I said Paul doesn't do that. At least in the game against Detroit, I didn't notice them giving the puck to Paul, and Paul just, come hell or high water, he was getting it out to the red line and getting it in deep, and that line had to spend some time in the defensive zone. But Kobe is right that Paul can hold on to the puck, and what Kobe was talking about is Paul has this in his toolbox. So, maybe they look for him in the defensive zone. Get the puck to Paulie and let him do the work to get it out, because he is a big, strong guy, and he can hold on to the puck. Now, if they're out against the Suzuki line, Suzuki and Caulfield specifically, and Slavkovsky is no slouch in this regard either, though he's bigger, but Suzuki and Caulfield are slippery and quick. So it's a different sort of protect the puck challenge. You're not going to maybe get bumped off the puck by Suzuki or Caulfield, but they're like a pickpocket, right? They can be sneaky, with their stick and steal it from you. So I think that's going to be a storyline in the series. Assuming the Lightning can get that matchup and choose to have that matchup, and assuming Paul stays on that line, let's see how Gord, Girgensons, and Paul do with this challenge. But Kobe's point about, for a guy who has had a tough year, injury-plagued year, offensive production down, minutes down, role reduced, now all of a sudden you're running the playoffs and Paulie, we need you on this line. We need you to fulfill this role and fill this role and do this assignment. We're giving you this assignment. This is critical to our team's success in the series. That's the sort of thing that, look, if you're a player, you got to love that, right? Being given that challenge 100%. And that opportunity.
The other thing I find interesting that Kobe said, and you see this a lot, is that imposing your will on the other team and being as physical as possible. So part of that Paul scenario would be if you are matched up with Suzuki and Caulfield, try to be physically dominant. Yeah,
they're quick and slippery like Hudson.
But punish
it's hard
them
to hit
you
them,
can.
Right? But
100%.
you want to, like Kobe said, get in their way, right?
Because they're going to try
them.
They're going to do the same to Kucherov. They're going to do the same to Braydon Point, and we saw that already. So I mean, that's fair game. And so, do we think the after whistle antics will pop up again? I told you I could see that happening, particularly early on in this series when teams are trying to establish themselves and send a message. But I mean, you hear this a lot. Impose your will on the other team.
Yeah.
And be physical.
Well, if the Canadiens do want to kind of push the envelope in terms of post-whistle scrums, I mean, I don't know if the Lightning are going to have success in the power play against Montreal. They've not had success in the power play going back the last couple of years in the playoffs against Florida. Kobe is right. Montreal's penalty kill, although it's been better, it was near the bottom, I think, for at least the first half of the year. They've inched their way up. I think they're just under the halfway point or the middle of the pack penalty kill. But according to what Kobe said, he feels this could be an advantage for the Lightning. If the Lightning start scoring on the power play, that will affect, and his point was this, that will affect what Montreal is willing to do to potentially take a penalty. Mm-hmm. You're more willing to force the referee to call a penalty. Sometimes the ref calls it, sometimes the ref doesn't call it. But you're more willing to put that in the ref's hands if your penalty kill is coming through for you. I mean, you're not choosing to go on the penalty kill, but if being involved physically is part of the game plan, you understand there are going to be some penalty kills that come along with that. But if you're struggling in the penalty kill, then it almost forces you to back off a little bit so you're not exposing the soft underbelly of your game in a series. But, I mean, the last meeting, the Lightning got 4 power plays, and the first 3 were, honestly fairly quiet. It was the last one they did pretty well when their play picked up in the third period.
Tonight, enjoy some Reif Rum, smooth, versatile, now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule, and taste why fans are switching. Reif Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reif Rum by name. Go Bolts. Enjoy responsibly. Let's get to Mark. He says, sit everyone. Let the fans go out there and play this game. LOL. I'm hearing they're throwing Dave and Greg out on the second line tonight. That would be bad. Bad.
So I once heard, and this was when I was in Johnstown. So we're talking ECHL, pro hockey, ECHL. And I remember talking with a player one time on that team. He's like, I have to laugh when, I hear fans talk about, well, I could play better than that guy. I'm not suggesting any Lightning fans are saying that. He's like, literally, if you put somebody out on the ice, that person might get killed. Like, if he doesn't know what he's doing,
sure,
you would get seriously injured playing in a Johnstown Chiefs game. That's what he said. I've taken that to heart. I try and stay as far away from the ice as possible, unless it's for a friendly family skate or something like that.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
I mean, these guys, they are the best of the best of the best of the best. I mean, you're talking about a fraction of the top 1% in the world that can do what they do. So if you're still playing pro and you're playing at the minor league level, let's say 2 steps below the NHL, I mean, you may not be in the 0.00001%, but you're in rarefied air. If you're playing pro hockey and getting paid to play hockey, you are extraordinarily gifted and talented.
It's a select few. It's a
very select few.
Yeah. Jason says Bolts defense seems especially vulnerable off the rush, nerve-wracking with a team like elite fast talent like Montreal. What's the best way to defend and prevent these chances? And I do think that's something most people are going to watch here. That elite talent of Montreal, and how is Tampa Bay able to defend them?
So some of it is what you're doing with the puck in the offensive zone. One of the games on the road trip we had High Note on, and he gave that answer. I think it was against Ottawa, because actually Buffalo, Ottawa, and Montreal are all, in that one way, cut kind of from the same cloth. Very dangerous in transition. It was the Ottawa game. He's like, if you're going to shoot pucks, you got to shoot them with a purpose and not, he said, throw a muffin up there, basically. Like, you've got to get a puck to the net where it's requiring a tough save. They can't just like grab it in, because they're going to look to fly the zone, right? So some of it is, are you holding onto the puck? If you're losing the puck, are you not losing it in an area where they can exploit you on a counter, and you have to be aware of what is coming? That Caulfield 50th goal was not so much a turnover. It was they just burst out of the defensive zone, and they had a little bit of a numbers advantage, and Caulfield shot it in. I'll be honest, I actually would give Caulfield that shot. It's from the side. I know he's a good shooter, but I mean, you're going to give up. They're going to get their looks off the rush. I'm not sure that was as dangerous a chance as some of the others that we have seen Montreal produce and be capable of producing. So they are going to get some rush looks. I think the Lightning would do well to minimize those in a couple of ways. Puck management is one thing I talked about, which is really, I mean, you want to have good puck management, but you especially have to be aware of not losing the puck in the offensive zone where they can catch you on counters. Also, if they're tired, like if you've had the puck in their end for a while, that is less likely to happen. They're like, we just need to get this puck out and get off the ice. And then part of it is, they talk about the F3, the third man, the forward that is highest in the offensive zone, whether you have the puck or you don't have the puck and you're just setting up kind of against a breakout. You have to make sure that it's a 3-on-3 and not a 3-on-2. But they have Giddy up to their game. Like, that's one of the strengths of their team.
Right.
It's like saying, stop Kucherov. How do you stop Kucherov? Well, it's very hard to stop Kucherov.
Yeah.
It's hard to stop the Canadiens every single time they want to go on the attack with their speed. But you can make it harder on them by, and I think I said this about Florida on yesterday's show, like make them earn everything that they get. You're not making it easier on them. The way you don't make it easier on them is avoid the muffins, as Heino talked about, and making sure that you're aware positionally so that every rush is an even rush, not an odd man rush.
It's valid, and make Montreal defend. I think that's as much as simple as that. I don't know if they're a great defensive like team. I certainly don't think this is one of the top 5 teams in the NHL when it comes to allowing goals. So, make it hard on them as well.
They're over 3. I mean, they're in that kind of middle of the pack, like below the top half, but in that like low 3s goals against. I actually could look it up and see where they're at. Now that they're finished, they're at 82 games played. But yeah, they're not where the Lightning 15th. Are at defensively. So they're right in the middle. Yeah, okay. I think that's actually an improvement from where they were. Maybe. So, I mean, they finished well, which jives because they went on, a 7-game win streak before the end of the season.
Zebra says a series with the Canadiens might actually be easier on the Lightning than playing different desperate teams every other night. So
the fan is talking about closing out the regular season.
That is correct.
I mean, look, those desperate teams included, the Buffalo, Montreal teams that were in the playoffs. I mean, the Lightning lost to Montreal twice down the stretch. They lost to Buffalo once down the stretch and 3 times after the Olympic break. So, I don't know. I mean, I think that the series is going to require higher level hockey from both teams. But it is different. The fan is right. You're seeing the same team every other night. And then we can kind of tap into what Kobe was talking about with looking your opponent in the eye and saying, I'm going to outlast you.
I love that. That's great. Jim says, Mish, Montreal fans outnumber us 5-1 online and probably in real life. Most of them have been insufferable to deal with. How do you guys personally make sure you don't get annoyed by fans?
Well, one easy way is to not go online. Right.
I agree.
I don't know how a fan in Montreal can annoy me if I'm not engaging in some way, shape, or form online. I know everybody is going online, but look, that's part of it now. I think that it has changed. It feels like it's changed. It's amped up online, even in just the last couple of years. But I'm not sure that this is exclusive to Montreal. I mean, I think probably opposing fans of any fan base will find that fan base, what was the word the fan used, insufferable? I mean, that's just the nature of the beast, right? Everything is amplified online. Everything is like volume 10 to 11. Remember This Is Spinal Tap? Do you watch that movie?
Yes,
Greg?
right. That's right.
These go to 11, like the volume, like it goes up higher, right? Online. So I think if you're gonna dip your toe in that pool, go in with your eyes wide open and understand that just because somebody is making a bold statement online doesn't mean that it's true.
That's true.
So look, the Canadiens have a good team. I said yesterday, the Canadiens fans have reason to crow about their team. They do. This team isn't going anywhere either. I mean, they have great young talent.
They do. All the way around. They do.
Yeah.
Syntropy says, I'm guessing Hetty is not going to make it back for the push. How about James or Holmberg?
Well, Holmberg, all we've heard, he's out long term. Hedman and Julian was asked this question, as we mentioned, in the Boston nationally televised game by Emily Kaplan. So to the Holmberg question, he said long term, like beyond the first round or something to that effect. I was on the air, so I didn't hear the answer. And Hedman, he said, Hedman will let us know when he's ready to return or something to that effect. James is on the ice. So of the three, it certainly seemed that James is the most likely to come into a playoff game.
Yeah.
But it's hard to know what his remaining timetable looks like. We're not in the medical room, assessing his progress. The fact that it was a leg injury, though, and he had surgery, he's been skating for...
How many weeks?
I mean, is it 2 weeks now?
Yeah.
It feels like it's been a while. For sure, he came on the road trip and was skating every day that the Lightning were on the ice. So all of those are positive signs. And again, he told Ed Encina he'd like to be back for the start of the playoffs, but that's his wish. That may not actually, be approved by the doctors in the organization. So we'll see.
Dustin says, go Bolts. Going to be a great series. I see the Bolts in 5 or 6 games as long as we forecheck and keep them on their heels. Also, the power play will be huge in this series.
Canadiens' power play will be huge, too. They have a good power play.
Yeah.
They have a dangerous power play.
Scott says, outstanding regular season. Lots of obstacles that were overcome. Defense will be key. Along with special teams, the Lightning need to get the power play rolling. And how I feel about the power play. I do think in the postseason, teams who are very skilled, I've said this over and over again, I'll reiterate it now, that do rely on their power play maybe a little bit more, or it's a big part of their offense, I think at times can be put at a disadvantage in the postseason because of officials swallowing the whistle.
It can. Yep.
It doesn't mean, and partner, would you say is the first round the most unpredictable? Because it's new.
I mean, we
and
hear that.
Everybody's fresh,
Yeah, I mean, the first round can
theory.
be tricky, but for teams that win a round and then lose in the second round, they're probably saying the second round's pretty tricky, right?
Can be.
So I think it all depends on your perspective. We will see upsets in the first round. We usually do every year. It may not be a 1 seed going out or, a division winner going out. But there was the 1 year, 2019, the Lightning, of course, famously were the 62-win season, lost in the first round. But every first-place team, the 4 first-place teams, all lost in the first round. The wild card teams went 4-0 that year, 2019. So it can happen. Does that mean that the first round is trickier? I mean, I do hear that, but I also hear that, the challenge gets more difficult with each successive round because you're facing a team that's tasted victory in that playoff year and built up its confidence. I think so let's go to 2018. That's a great example. The Washington Capitals won the Stanley Cup. They were down 0-2 in the first round. They lost the first 2 at home to Columbus. They were able to rally. So they got through that first round. That jives with what you're saying, that the first round can be tricky. But I think their biggest series win that year was the second round. They beat Pittsburgh. It was like we finally got over the hump. They won Game 6 in Pittsburgh in overtime to win the series, and they were rolling after that. The Lightning, thanks to Vasilevsky in large part, pushed them to 7 games. And then, they basically took care of Vegas, no trouble. It was 5-game series. Correct. So what was the most important series for the Washington Capitals in 2018? Yeah, the first round was tricky, but I think the second round series was the one that gave them their turbo boost through rounds 3 and 4.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Getting over that hump in many ways.
They were their bugaboo for all those years.
They were. Colin says, would love to see the power play get more reps in tonight. It'll be critical if Tampa Bay is going to go deep in the playoffs. I would agree.
Yeah, getting the reps. The Rangers' penalty kill is not going to be Rangers penalty kill is actually a middle of the pack penalty kill. But, I mean, just to get reps and touches and run through some stuff that they might want to try and run through, I guess is important, and maybe help them build up confidence, because they have been in a little bit of a power play rut here recently. I mean, the Kucherov goal in Buffalo on the power play, I think, has been their only power play goal in, I don't even know how many games. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah.
But I also think that kind of, you start fresh in the playoffs. So I guess I'm kind of sort of agreeing with the fan, but I don't think it's the be-all, end-all. Now, from the standpoint of the power play clicking tonight means Cooch gets a bunch of points and Point maybe gets a couple of goals and gets to 20, yeah, I think that would be great.
How about Bjorkstrand gets a hat trick? And let's go, heading into the playoffs, Come on. Greg says, can't let the Habs bait us into dumb penalties. We have way more playoff experience, so let's use our heads.
I do think that game in Montreal where the Canadiens got 7 power plays, it was the second most penalty kills the Lightning have had in a game this year. I think some of that was tied into the referees, honestly. I mean, there were some 50-50 scrums that either should have been even up or they should have been even up. I mean, I'm not going to say Montreal should have gotten the extra penalty, but the Lightning got the extra penalty. Or let's say like Braydon Point crashes into Dobesh, right? So they gave him 2 for goalie interference. The Canadiens reacted on Point, but Point got the extra penalty went to the Lightning. Everything after that was all even up. It's like, well, the Canadiens reacted on Point. That's what started the scrum. So there was some of that happening in that Montreal game. I'm not sure all the referees around the league, the ones working in the playoffs, would call it the same way. But the overall point is correct. If the Canadiens are getting twice as many power play chances per game as the Lightning or through the series, that means the Lightning put themselves in a very bad spot.
Last one. Two Men Tampa says Mish was right about 96 points. Again.
Yeah, that one did prove to be true. It was close, though. I think if the Islanders, either the Islanders or Columbus, if one of them had not gotten to a massive slump, we probably would have seen a team miss the playoffs with 96 or more. I mean, Ottawa's at 97 right now with a game to go. Philly is locked in at 98. Philly got into the playoffs in part. They got hot, but in part because both Columbus and the Islanders dipped. And then you have Detroit, which also dipped. So they dipped, right? I mean, that's part of it. You have to play at a certain level through all 82. They didn't get to 96. But this might have been the year where we would have seen it. I still think 98 would have been enough. I mean, we'll never know. Had those other teams stayed hot. But again, they were playing each other. So, like Columbus lost some head-to-head games. They were key games. Like Columbus lost a couple of games to Boston down the stretch that really hurt them, that helped Boston, up their point total. We'll see. Traditionally, it has been 96, should be enough to get you in. Next year, that dynamic changes a little bit because we're adding 2 games to the regular season. Does that mean it's 100? Are you assuming those 2 games are both wins? I don't really know. I think we're going to have to let some seasons play out and kind of see where the cut line is. But seeing this is the last year of 82, we can now say definitively, since they put this playoff format in place with the divisions and the 2 wild cards, since 13-14, however many seasons that is. Now we had the 2 that were weird because we had the shortened season with COVID and then the next season. So 13-14 to this year is 13 seasons. Subtract 2 with those weird years. So 11 seasons. That's 22 races, East and West. There have only been 2 instances of a team getting to 96 and missing the playoffs. 2. And those teams were the only teams to do it. So that's a pretty good indicator.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
It is. Interesting. Partner, I will talk to you tonight. Last regular season game, and then the fun starts.
Yeah, game 82, fan appreciation night. The Lightning are wearing their Stadium Series jerseys, too. So if you're coming to the game, you'll get to see them, I believe, for the last time. I don't know if that's true. Steve's nodding. Yes. except for fans wearing them in the building. We'll see the jerseys there. I've seen a lot of Stadium Series jerseys in the building worn by fans.
Good job. Thanks to Kobe as well.
Thanks
Breaking
to Kobe.
it all down. We appreciate that. And thanks to Steve Ersnick as well. And thanks to all of you for listening to us. We've got the game tonight, and then Mish and I will be back at it tomorrow, noon to 1, breaking it all down. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch right here on Lightning Radio.